Larry Johnson's a veteran of the CIA and the State Department's Office of Counterterrorism. He's the founder of Berg Associates. And just last week, he was talking sense to the panjandrums of the United Nations Security Council. And we couldn't resist. We had to get a second opinion on the events that are going on now in the world. Larry, first of all, tell us what it was like at the United Nations. Were you well received? Tell us the essence of the message you delivered there.
Sure. I was well received. I was, in fact, seated next to the British delegation. Initially, just a young woman was seated in the chair, and then the British representative finally showed up. To his credit, unlike his disaster of a colleague from France, the British ambassador started off his remarks by thanking all of the briefers, which included me. I didn't even get thanks from my own country's representative. But apart from that, I was extremely well received by the Russians, by the Chinese, by the Algerians, representatives of Mozambique, Sierra Leone, even the representatives of Ecuador, Korea, and Japan were not dismissive. And the thrust of my message was, look, I've been involved with international money laundering investigations, with international criminal investigations surrounding the downing of Panama 103. I've been involved with planning terrorist operations while doing training exercises, so I know the kind of planning that goes into it. There's absolutely no reason in the world this has not been investigated by the UN, except for one reason. They already know who did it, and nobody wants to be out there. Most of these countries don't want to finger the United States as the supreme culprit, even though we know that that's who did it. And so my attempt was to try to shame the United States, the United Nations, a little bit into doing its job and upholding actual international rules-based order instead of this selective prosecution where it's okay for the United States to destroy infrastructure that is critical to the economy of Germany. What's sort of shameful, though, in all of this is the fact
the economy of Europe, in fact.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a terrorist act against Europe, not just Germany and Russia. The joint owners of the pipeline had extremely serious impact on the environment. Everybody knows who did it, but no one will say so, not even the United Nations. It's an extraordinary example of lawlessness, isn't it?
Yeah, of course I laugh. At least Liz Truss said it. She sent off a text message, and Sikorsky, the former foreign minister of Poland, he sent off a tweet. Oh, way to go, United States! So they clearly knew who did it. What's sort of disgraceful in this is that the purpose of this act had one single objective: destroy Russia's ability to supply cheap energy to Europe and can try to compel the Europeans into buying from the United States. That's it. Greed. Pure, unadulterated greed. That's what this was all about.
It's gangsterism, yeah? I mean, if the mafia did a crime like this, you wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. The mafia would be more sensible about it. And yet you'd be surprised at the number of Americans that you think would be more thoughtful, that are experienced, that are wealthy, that are well-educated, that said, oh, yeah, we had to destroy this because we couldn't allow Russia to supply Germany with cheap natural gas. That made Germany a vassal state. And I'm going, whoa, wait a second. I thought this whole international economic theory about free trade operated on the principle that you try to pay the lowest price for a commodity, not the highest price, and that you don't punish a country for being successful and producing something at a lower price. Good God, what are we talking about? Then what they wanted is traditional mercantilism that's based upon monopoly.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, turning to events in your country, the rest of the world is, at least those with access to alternative media, is transfixed at the sight of armed big thugs knocking hell out of boys and girls who are peacefully protesting against what's happening and what's about to happen in Gaza. And the liberals are cheering on, Larry. Has the country gone mad?
Well, you and I are, I think, about the same age. And we can remember back in 68, 69, the anti-war protests. And what I'm struck by is the similarities. Because back in 68, 69, when these anti-war protesters were coming out, they were being dismissed as outside agitators. They were under the control of foreign organizations, and that their message was illegitimate. But the reality was their message was exactly right. The United States government was lying about the pretext for the war in Vietnam. And it was killing civilians in terrible numbers in Vietnam. So those protesters were right. Whether or not there was outside organization or agitators, the message was correct. There's a part of me that believes that there may actually be, if you will, the U.S. government helping organize and push these protests for one reason: to inoculate the American public so that it accepts police violence against protesters. So, right now it's being portrayed as these are anti-Semitic protesters and they're threatening Jews. Well, I don't discount at all the likelihood that there are FBI provocateurs put into those crowds deliberately trying to initiate acts of violence to provoke a police response. But once Americans become accustomed to that police response, then come November, if there are protests against an election being stolen, then we're all on board with, these protesters are out of line, beat them up, put them in jail. And that's one of the, it's so dangerous because this is a clear violation of the First Amendment.
Well, great minds think alike, Larry. I tweeted this very morning to the MAGA people, the Trump supporters, who are cheering on what's happening on campuses now all over America. This is what's in store for you when they either kill or jail or rob your hero of the presidency of the United States. Why can't you see that?
Yeah, no, because it's all emotion. If you recall, think back how old you were when you saw the movie Exodus with Paul Newman, Lauren Bacall. That introduced the meme into the American and I think the world conscience about Israel is the small David versus this vicious Arabic Goliath, this Muslim Goliath. And that's been the theme that has perpetuated for the last 60 years. And what we're seeing right now, particularly since October 7th, is that meme is being flipped completely. That all of a sudden, it's not Israel that's David, it's Israel that's the Goliath. It's the Palestinian people who are the David. It's the Palestinian people who are being murdered, being abused, being facing genocide, being starved. Everything that used to be Israel being the persecuted ones, they're the ones persecuting. They're the ones doing the killing in disproportionate amounts. And the numbers bear that out. They always wanted to talk about Hamas being the terrorist state or the terrorist organization. Yet when you go back and look at all of the terrorist attacks attributed to Hamas since 2000, it numbers something around 1,500. And the majority of those attacks are against military or police targets, not against civilian targets. And 1,500 casualties. Compare that with, when you go back prior to October 7th and then in October 7th, you're approaching 50,000 Palestinians murdered. 50,000. You tell me how 50,000 is somehow justifies 1,500. I mean, it's just the numbers are not even.
It's not even an eye for an eye, is it? It's 10, 15, 25 eyes for an eye.
Yeah.
Even if you look at it in that on those metrics. Now, here's a question for you as an expert in the corridors of power. It was Scott Ritter's view that the ICC are not really considering a warrant for the arrest of Netanyahu, that this has actually been got up by Netanyahu himself to inveigle himself in Washington, where, of course, there's a very large amount of skepticism and inbuilt hostility to the ICC.
Right.
Do you think there is going to be a warrant for the arrest of Netanyahu?
No, I'm doubtful of that, but we are seeing, I think today Turkey finally announced it was joining South Africa's case in the ICC against Israel. So I think that's significant. That shows at least in the past, Israel is sort of an ally of Turkey or vice versa. And now Erdogan, facing, political defeat at home, he's come to his senses and recognizes he can't continue to collaborate with Israel. But I think Scott's right. Some of this is contrived. It gets to put Netanyahu in a position to be maybe a more sympathetic figure. But let everybody understand one thing. If Netanyahu fell over dead tonight, gone tomorrow, it's not going to change Israel's policy one iota, because the 78% of the Israelis support killing the Palestinians, exterminating the Palestinians, ridding Gaza of Palestinians. So, people shouldn't kid themselves that this is somehow just a policy of a crazed Netanyahu. Bibi Netanyahu he's just a symptom of a far deeper sickness.
Now, we were talking earlier, Larry, about the dichotomy that will crystallize in November. You choose Trump or you choose Biden, or the deep state decides what you chose, however it's worked out. But isn't that the same in America as it is in Britain, as it is in Israel? That both parties actually stand for exactly the same things. It's like two cheeks of the same ass, tightly clenched together, inseparable.
Yeah. We need some Americanized versions of George Galloway over here. I congratulate you on your triumph in your election, trouncing both the Tories and Labor. And unfortunately, we don't have that kind of movement yet in the United States. Both parties, you correctly note, they're corrupt. And even if Trump wins, I don't think it's going to bring about a shift in the policy towards Israel. It will bring about a shift in the policy towards Ukraine. That's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
And it will bring about a change with respect to China. So from that standpoint alone, I think Trump will at least be able to walk America back from the precipice of nuclear disaster. But the number of Americans.
I agree with that. I agree with that, and for that reason, and that reason alone, Larry, I'm hoping that Trump prevails, because it will at least mean that the danger of a nuclear confrontation over Ukraine will swiftly end. In fact, I expect that Trump will go through the whole Ukraine portfolio like a dose of salts, because the corruption of the Biden crime family in Ukraine, if exposed, could finish the Democrats as a political force. So how's that going? Is it looking more likely than not that Trump will win? And will the deep state let him win?
The deep state's going to do everything in its power to thwart him. That is true. But at least Trump now recognizes, and his campaign team now recognizes, that the Democrats are likely to cheat. They were extremely naive in 2020. They never imagined that the Democrats would cheat on the scale. And they also didn't realize that some Republicans had also been involved in that kind of cheating, such as I believe the governor of Georgia, Ryan Kemp, was one example. So they're now got a team of lawyers. If you go back to 2020, within the immediate days after that stolen election, Trump did not have one organized team to attack it. It was spread out about 3 or 4 different groups. Sidney Powell was doing her thing, Rudy Giuliani doing his thing. It was ridiculous. It was not organized. So they've addressed that. They've now got lawyers lined up, ready to go, already 6 to 8 months out. That's the first step. The second step is groups like the Heritage Foundation have taken on the task of getting a government organized, ready to go. So that, because when Trump ran in 2016, the guy who became famous on television for, hey, you're fired, he was terrible at hiring people, hired some of the very wrong people you could. And so the Heritage Foundation is moving in to try to correct that, to have some qualified people that would support, let's call it the American First agenda, where America tries to take care of its own social needs and problems here at home before we go out and try to lecture the world on how to fix itself.
Amen. Let's hope that comes to pass. Any word on a running mate yet, Larry?
No, he's kept that a secret. I don't think it's going to be anybody who's currently a member of Congress or Senate, simply because they need every one of those bodies in for the numbers come November. I think it'll be probably a governor, somebody from outside. Tulsi Gabbard, the former Democrat member of the House of Representatives, but something of an independent. She's been mentioned. I think she would be an attractive choice. But apart from that, no word.
Larry Johnson, as always, no wonder you dazzled the UN Security Council. They were lucky to have you, as are we here on the Mother of All Talk Shows. Thanks for joining us again this evening.